I want you to picture a very specific, a very mundane moment. You're standing at your bathroom sink.
Right.
It's early, or maybe it's late. You work the night shift, so time is a bit fluid for you anyway. You're 72 years old. You're just brushing your teeth, looking in the mirror, going through the motions. But then there's a smell.
And that's the detail that really sticks with me in this case. It's not smoke. It's not something burning.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a scent you can't quite describe. It's vague.
Right, and a split second later, the lights go out, literally. You wake up on the bathroom tile with a bruise on your forehead and no idea how you got there.
It's a terrifying experience. And for the man we're talking about today, we're calling him James, this wasn't a one-off event. It happened 3 times in a single 24-hour period.
3 times, at the sink, in the shower, and then again just watching TV. Total collapse. Now, if I'm James, or James's family, I'm thinking, heart attack, stroke, maybe I'm just dehydrated. I go to the ER, they run the standard blood panels, and maybe they just tell me to drink more water and take it easy.
Which is exactly what often happens.
Yeah.
And to be fair, James did have some standard issues, high blood pressure, some kidney strain. But what makes this deep dive different is that his doctors didn't stop at the standard workup. They looked at his brain waves.
Mm.
And when they did, they found a story written in his neurology that connects everything: his kidneys, his immune system, his ability to navigate a room, and yes, his history of COVID-19.
This is what hooked me on this stack of research you sent over. We aren't just talking about fainting here. We're doing a deep dive into a specific emerging neurological signature of long COVID. We've got a detailed EEG analysis of James's brain, a clinical synthesis that reads like a detective novel, and some really cutting-edge research from late 2024 and 2025 that changes how we look at post-viral brains.
It really does. And the aha moment here isn't just one thing. It's realizing that James's brain wasn't just tired or aging. It was rhythmically out of sync.
Okay, let's unpack that. Because when I read rhythmically out of sync, I think of a bad drummer. But we need to start with the evidence. The EEG. This is where they found the smoking gun, right?
Or as I like to call it, the slowing gun.
Okay, I'll give you that one. The report highlights something called a 7 Hertz posterior dominant rhythm, or PDR. Now, I know Hertz is a measure of frequency, but to the average person, 7 Hertz is just a number. Can you contextualize that for us? What should a healthy 72-year-old brain sound like?
Think of the posterior dominant rhythm as your brain's idle speed. When you sit in your car, you put it in neutral, and the engine just hums. It's ready to go, but it's not revving. That's your PDR.
Okay.
In a healthy adult, even an older adult, that engine should idle between 8 and 13 hertz. That's the alpha range. It's a crisp, alert readiness.
And James was at 7?
He was at 7. He shifted down into the theta range. So his engine is idling way too low. It's chugging. In clinical terms, we call this mild diffuse encephalopathy.
Which sounds terrifying. Encephalopathy usually implies some kind of brain damage or disease.
It sounds worse than it is, but it is serious. It basically means global cortical dysfunction. The brain's processing speed has dropped. The refresh rate of his consciousness is lagging.
Okay, but here's where I get skeptical. James is 72. He's had these fainting spells, so they put him on medication. I saw levetiracetam Keppra on his chart. Isn't that a heavy-duty anti-seizure drug? Could the cure be causing the problem? Like, did we just sedate his brain down to 7 hertz?
That is the million-dollar question, and it's the first thing a good neurologist checks, is this drug-induced slowing. But we have sources here, specifically a study from 2021 that looked at this exact variable. They compared different anti-epileptic drugs. Some, like Valpro, absolutely slow down your background rhythms. They dampen the system.
But Keppra.
Keppra does not. The study was very clear. Levetiracetam does not significantly alter the posterior dominant rhythm. So that 7 hertz signal, that's organic. That is James's brain struggling to maintain its idle speed, independent of the medication.
So the slowness is real. It's the brain itself. But I noticed a note in the report that seemed, odd. It mentioned reactivity. It said when James opened his eyes, the rhythm changed. When he closed them, the 7 hertz hum came back. Why is that such a big deal?
That is actually the most hopeful sentence in the entire report.
Really?
Yes, because it means the machinery isn't broken. It's just suppressed. We call it preserved reactivity. The wiring that connects the deep brain to the surface, the thalamocortical circuitry, is still listening to the outside world.
I see.
If James had severe permanent brain damage, like a fixed scar from a massive stroke, that rhythm wouldn't budge no matter what he did with his eyes. It'd be a flat, stubborn signal.
So the engine is slow, but the gas pedal still works.
Ideally, yes. It suggests reversibility. The brain is sluggish, but it's distinct from a brain that has fundamentally failed.
Okay, so we have a slow idle. But this is where the story gets really weird for me. The slowing wasn't happening everywhere evenly. The report flags focal right hemisphere dysfunction.
This is the second major pattern.
And I want to dig into this because I feel like we always hear about the left brain language, logic, math. But James is having a power failure specifically on the right side. What is the right hemisphere actually doing for him? Or failing to do?
The right hemisphere is doing a lot of the heavy lifting for what makes us feel human and connected. Specifically, the right temporal lobe. It houses the fusiform gyrus.
Which does what?
Face recognition.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So imagine looking at your wife or your coworker and knowing who they are intellectually, but the visual processing that instantly says, "That's Sarah," is lagging. It's fuzzy.
That's incredibly isolating.
It gets deeper. The right temporal lobe also handles emotional processing and reading social cues, interpreting prosody, which is the musicality of speech.
Right.
Is someone being sarcastic? Are they sad? Are they angry? If that part of your brain is running at 7 hertz while everyone else is at 10, you are literally missing the vibe of every conversation.
So James might be feeling brain fog, but it's not just, I forgot where my keys are. It's, I feel detached from the people around me.
Exactly. Patients often describe it as derealization, like they're watching a movie of their life rather than living it. And we haven't even mentioned spatial navigation. The right hemisphere maps your world. So James, who has worked night shifts and knows his routine, might suddenly feel unsure of where the doorway is in his own bathroom.
Which brings us back to the fainting. But before we get there, why the right side? Does long COVID have some kind of vendetta against the right hemisphere?
Oddly enough, the research suggests it might. We have papers, one from Anthony and Hanif, and a massive review from 2024, showing a distinct pattern. Long COVID seems to disproportionately affect blood flow perfusion in the right hemisphere.
That is wildly specific.
It is. We don't fully know why yet, but the hypoperfusion, the lack of blood flow, shows up on imaging scans more heavily on that side. It's like a brownout that hits one specific neighborhood of the brain harder than the others.
So we have a slow engine, and specifically a slow right side. But I want to get to the mechanism. We can't just say it's slow. What is physically happening inside James's skull to cause this? The sources use a phrase that sounds like a technoband. Thalacortical dysrhythmia.
It does sound cool, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But it's actually a disruption of the brain's timing belt.
Go with that. The timing belt.
Okay, so deep in the center of your brain, you have the thalamus. It's the pacemaker. It sets the beat for the cortex, the outer layer where all the thinking happens. In a healthy brain, the thalamus fires in a smooth, continuous mode. We call it tonic firing.
Smooth jazz.
Sure. But in James's case, and in this specific long COVID profile, the thalamus has shifted gears. It's gone into burst mode. Instead of a smooth hum, it's firing in choppy, slow bursts.
Okay.
That forces the cortex to slow down to match it. That's where the 7 hertz comes from. The drummer's off beat, so the whole band has to slow down.
But who messed with the drummer? Why did the thalamus switch to burst mode?
It's not just one thing. It's a perfect storm of 3 drivers. First, we touched on it, hypoperfusion. The brain isn't getting enough blood.
The fuel line is clogged.
Essentially. Studies show that in patients with dysautonomia, which James likely has, brain blood flow can drop significantly even when they are just lying down. The thalamus is very energy hungry. If it doesn't get oxygen, it starts to sputter.
Okay, driver number 2.
Neuroinflammation. This is where the immune system comes in. The brain has its own immune cells called microglia.
Wait, I thought the immune system was white blood cells in the veins. What are microglia doing in the brain?
They are the brain's gardeners. Normally, they prune connections and clean up waste. But in long COVID, we see evidence, specifically from TSPO PET imaging, that these cells stay activated for years. They get angry. They release inflammatory chemicals, cytokines, that irritate the neurons.
So the thalamus is starving for blood, and it's also being yelled at by angry immune cells.
Exactly. And the third driver,
What's that?
a leaky brain, blood-brain barrier disruption.
That sounds like a horror movie title.
It's alarming. A study by Green and his team in 2024 showed that this barrier becomes permeable, and guess where? Specifically in the right temporal lobe.
No way. The same spot.
The very same spot. So now you have inflammatory proteins from the rest of the body just leaking into the brain-sensitive command center.
It's a vicious cycle. No blood, high inflammation, and the gates are left open. But this leads me to the rest of James's body. Because if the barrier is leaking, that means the stuff outside the brain matters. And looking at his labs, his kidneys were struggling.
This is a critical piece of the puzzle. We call it cerebrorenal syndrome.
Which sounds like head kidney syndrome.
Basically, James is fluctuating between stage 3B and stage 4 kidney disease.
Hmm.
Now, you might ask, why does the brain care about the kidneys?
Oh, I am asking that.
Because the kidneys manage the body's fluid balance and blood pressure. When the kidneys dysfunction, it impairs something called cerebral autoregulation.
Autoregulation.
It's the brain's ability to keep its own blood pressure steady, regardless of what the rest of the body is doing.
Yeah.
If you stand up, your brain has to quickly adjust to keep the lights on. If the kidneys aren't helping manage the pressure, the brain is at the mercy of gravity.
Which brings us right back to the bathroom sink. But there's one more number in the labs that made my eyes pop out. His IgE level, it was 314.
Which is more than 3 times the normal limit.
Usually that means allergies, right? Like, I'm allergic to cats.
In a standard physical, yes. But in the context of long COVID and mysterious fainting, a spike this high is a huge red flag for MCS, mast cell activation syndrome.
We hear about MCS constantly in the chronic illness space, connected to James.
Mast cells are part of your innate immune defense. When they get triggered, they dump histamine and cytokines into the blood. Remember that leaky blood-brain barrier?
Oh, I see where this is going.
If James has high circulating histamine from MCS and a leaky barrier, those chemicals are crossing into the brain and driving that neuroinflammation. It's chemically forcing the brain into that slow, foggy state.
So his immune system is basically poisoning his brain functionality. Now, I want to solve the mystery of the smell, the unplaceable scent, right before he fainted. He's on Keppra because the doctors thought, okay, smell plus fainting equals seizure. That's the textbook rule, isn't it?
It is the classic teaching. In temporal lobe epilepsy, people describe an aura, but the smell is usually very specific. It's almost always burnt rubber.
And James was clear it wasn't burnt rubber.
Right. It was faint, hard to characterize. And look at the timing. Brushing teeth, showering, these are orthostatic stressors. You're standing still, or the hot water is dilating your blood vessels.
The blood is pooling in his feet.
Exactly. This points away from epilepsy and squarely toward autonomic dysregulation, POTS. The theory here is fascinating. As his blood pressure bottomed out, the blood flow to his brain dropped. The olfactory cortex, the part of the brain that processes smell, is evolutionarily ancient and very sensitive to oxygen levels.
So the smell wasn't a seizure.
Likely not. It was the olfactory cortex glitching out. It was sputtering due to lack of fuel just milliseconds before the rest of the brain shut down and he hit the floor.
That is a wild distinction. It's a brain faint, not a brainstorm.
And that changes everything for treatment. If you treat this as epilepsy, you sedate the brain. If you treat it as dysautonomia and hypoperfusion, you try to wake it up and fuel it.
So let's talk about that path forward. James is 72. He's got the kidney issues, the brain slowing, the inflammation.
Yep.
Is this fixable, or are we just managing the decline?
The sources are cautiously optimistic, but they emphasize that this is a marathon. The Mount Sinai longitudinal study tracks patients like James for up to 42 months. That's 3.5 years.
That is a long road.
It is. But they do see recovery. Cognitive speeds improve, but you have to be aggressive.
What's in the toolbox? If we want to speed that 7 Hertz engine back up to a healthy 10, what do we actually do?
The sources outline 4 evidence-based pillars. And the first one is interesting because it involves a tank, HBOT hyperbaric oxygen therapy.
I've seen pictures of these. You lie in a glass tube.
Yeah, it looks a bit sci-fi.
Yeah.
You're breathing 100% oxygen at high pressure.
Yeah.
But here's the trick. It's not just about flooding the body with air. The protocol involves fluctuating the oxygen levels. This triggers the hypoxic paradox.
That sounds contradictory.
It's brilliant. By tricking the body into thinking oxygen is fluctuating, you trigger the release of stem cells and growth factors. You stimulate angiogenesis, the growth of new blood vessels.
So you're literally replumbing the brain.
Exactly. You are building new roads to get blood to that starving right hemisphere.
That's incredible. Okay, pillar 2.
Neurofeedback. This is basically physical therapy for brain waves.
How does that work? You can't lift weights with your brain.
You sort of can.
Yeah.
James would be hooked up to an EEG monitor that's connected to a screen, maybe playing a movie or a video game. When his brain hits that target 10 Hertz rhythm, the screen gets bright and the movie plays smoothly. When he drops back to 7 Hertz, the screen dims or the audio cuts out.
So his brain subconsciously learns, hey, if I speed up, I get the reward.
Right. It's operant conditioning. You are retraining the drummer to keep the beat.
I love that. What about the inflammation? If the microglia are angry, how do we calm them down?
That's pillar 3, LDN, or low-dose naltrexone. Now, at high doses, naltrexone is used for opioid addiction. But at very low doses, it acts as a glial modulator.
Glial modulator.
It basically binds to those angry immune cells in the brain and flips a switch that says, stop firing. It turns off the inflammation at the source.
And the fainting. The bathroom floor problem.
Pillar 4, stellate ganglion block, or SGB.
That sounds painful.
It's an injection, so it's not fun, but it's quick. They inject an anesthetic into a nerve bundle in the neck. It acts like a reboot button for the sympathetic nervous system, the fight-or-flight mode. By resetting that, you help stabilize the autonomic system, which improves blood flow regulation.
So no more passing out when brushing teeth.
That's the goal.
It's amazing that we have such a specific menu of treatments now. A few years ago, James might have just been told, you're getting old, try not to fall.
That's the power of the deep dive. By understanding the mechanism, thalamocortical dysrhythmia, inflammation, perfusion, we can target the treatment. And remember this silver lining we talked about. His EEG showed reactivity.
The gas pedal works.
The gas pedal works. His brain is waiting to be fixed. It's not a scar, it's a suppressed state.
So James's story is actually a story of hope, provided you look deep enough at the data.
Absolutely.
Before we wrap up, I want to zoom out. We've been looking at James, but the sources mentioned something at the very end that kind of blew my mind. A connection to something called visual snow syndrome.
Oh, this is fascinating. And it's a great example of how these deep dives connect seemingly random things. Visual snow is a condition where people see static-like bad TV reception over their entire visual field.
24/7.
I've heard of this. People say it's maddening.
It is. And for a long time, doctors told patients it was anxiety or just in their heads. But the research linked here suggests the underlying mechanism in visual snow is almost identical to what we found in James, thalamocortical dysrhythmia.
The choppy drummer again. The same choppy drummer.
Yeah.
A disruption in that pacemaker rhythm. And researchers are finding a huge overlap tinnitus brain fog and this visual static often triggered after a viral infection.
So here's the provocative thought for you listening right now. Are we looking at a singular brain failure mode? Are conditions we used to think were totally separate? Long COVID brain fog, POTS fainting, visual snow, actually just different flavors of the same rhythmic collapse in the brain.
It's a question that could redefine how we treat neurology in the post-viral era. Instead of treating the symptom, we treat the rhythm.
It really makes you wonder how many other medical mysteries are just waiting for the right EEG to decode them. That's all for this deep dive. Thanks for listening, and stay curious.